Hello and welcome to another Lowdown video with Jonny and Dana. We are the Boro podcast that gives you all of your Boro Lowdowns in a podcast. Boro have signed Dan Barlaser for £900,000, rising to 1.5 million on a 3.5 year deal from Rotherham. Dana, we said at the start of the season that Dan Barlaser was on our radar. We've now signed him, so I feel like your overall assessment is going to be really positive, right? So, what's your assessment on the signing of Dan Barlaser?
Yeah, really, really good. Big fan of the deal. Picking up a good value player from a poorly performing team, which I think is probably our place in the market now. I think long gone are the days of spending big bucks on good performing players in good performing teams. It's just something of the past now. And I think the Barlaser deal probably represents a new leaf, turning over a new page for Boro. And I'm really happy that we've brought him in. He's a very good player. Should be playing at a better place club than Rotherham. And he goes with all of Rotherham fans' well wishes. You know, we got a tweet from a Rotherham fan saying that, you know, he's a joy to watch, get him on it as much as possible. And he run the game. He's got a tackle, intercepts a lot, can run with it. Vision is unreal. He's got a goal in him, a cruel cross from corners. He's got just about everything apart from pace. Once he gets in, he will stay. So it's always really good to hear good things about players that you're signing. And yeah, there's another one. Dan Barlaser gets a lot of well wishes from Rotherham fans, which is fantastic to hear.
Yeah, he seems like a jack of all trades by that tweet, isn't it? Like he can
Yeah,
do it all.
definitely.
He can spin plates, can juggle, can sing, dance, tap.
He's got a high level on Cooking Mama.
Yeah, you know what I mean? He can do it all, he can climb trees. He's that type of guy that'll save you out of like a car crash or anything like, Dan Barlaser. He can just do everything, can't he? But no, he's a really exciting signing, isn't he? I think he's a really talented boy. A good range of passing, and I think he's second highest in the rankings for assists this season from midfield. I think is it Ryan Giles just got more, which is also strange to have those top two players in the squad. And I think
they're both on the same amount. They've both got 7 assists this season. Yeah, same amount.
Again, still a fantastic, and when we seen him for Rotherham and in his previous clubs, he just looks like a boy who's really grown into Championship football, but also the trajectory he can go on, I think, is still even a lot higher. I think he's definitely a Premier League player in the waiting, and to get him for £900,000. And I know he could have been a free in the summer, which you can't really, you can't take that risk because he would have probably went to a good side in the summer to secure his services to get it for the deal that we have. I think I'd be raging if I was Rotherham to let him go off body for that much, but I think it's a really, really good deal for us. I'm really, really excited by him and to see where he fits in the side. But I think we'll come into that in just a moment. But then I think we should get a lowdown from a Rotherham perspective. I know we got that tweet there, but we did speak to the New York Talk podcast to give us a bit more insight on Dan Barlaser.
Dan Barlaser's style of play is we've burned the previous manager referred to sort of the quarterback, sort of sits quite deep and sort of can ping it out left, right, and centre. That really undersells him a little bit because he does everything else pretty well as well. His best attributes are his passing range. His little passes inside are fantastic. His vision is brilliant, but he also has the option to ping the ball to the other side of the pitch, and make it so easy for the wide players to run onto the ball. He's one of the best we've seen at Rotherham in a long, long time. That's obviously a key area. His distribution, his set pieces are excellent. He takes all the corners and free kicks for us, or did obviously. So that'll be something to interest to see if that continues with him. With obviously going to the new club. I think his energy and his work rate does go sort of under the radar because of how good his passing is and everything else is. I think it goes under the radar. He's really, really good at sort of chasing the ball down. He often started the press a couple of times when we needed him to. He is a very, very hard-working player, or certainly has been in the system that we needed him to be in. So he's going to be a huge miss because of those number of things. His possible weakness for Dan Barlaser is there aren't many because he is that good at this level. One of his issues is he does sometimes hold onto the ball a little bit too long. And for us, because he played so deep in that midfield, when he lost the ball, the defence were instantly under pressure. So that is one area that is an issue. It cost us a couple of goals last season, which in the end didn't cost us as a result. but it can at times put us under a little bit of pressure. When he's having an off day, he looks like he's not playing very well. Looks like he's not bothered. But for us, they were very, very few and far between. To be fair to him, his time at Rotherham has been a massive success. He came to us pre-COVID, so it must have been 2019-20 season, and he came with he looked like a boy, and he now goes having 2 promotions under his belt, a Wembley win, and put us in a position, helped us get into a position to hopefully stay out this season. So he goes with the best wishes of every single Rotherham fan, I think. His skill and his quality is up there as one of the best we've seen, like I mentioned a minute ago, in a very, very, very long time. He's such a good player. He's such a likeable lad as well. We're lucky enough to meet him a few times. We've had him on our podcast a couple of times as well. He's just a great, great guy as well. So humble, down to earth. You know, there's not one of these typical footballers that's thinks bigger than themselves, and that's been a big part of. It's been obvious on the pitch. That's sort of how he plays. I think he'll be a great success at Middlesbrough. I think the price you paid is probably a fair price. You know, if he had longer his contract, it'd probably be more, but I have absolutely no doubt it'll be an absolute success. And I think he can play in the Premier League. That's how good I think he is. And I hope for his sake that he does, because that's all Rotherham fans wish him the absolute best.
There's me saying it's a snip, and then they're giving it a fair price. But I mean, you know, look, I think that, and also thank you very much for that as well, guys. And look, but Dan Barlaser, Dan, I think we've heard a Rotherham perspective now, but we've also done some digging ourselves. So what can we expect from Dan Barlaser then? From what you've seen, what impresses you?
A lot of creativity and a different option of basically that creative value in the team. It lessens the burden on Giles. It gives us that option to be able to create from the centre of the pitch, which I think has maybe been something that we've been lacking. You know, with Howson and Hackney, they're probably more the type to probably pass to somebody a little bit more creative, whereas Barlaser is the creative option in the team. And his output for a player that I wouldn't necessarily say that he's not established in the Championship, but he's definitely played more games in League One. To have 7 assists from an expected assists number of 5.6, marginally overperforming that, is really, really good. He has the 9th highest expected assists in the Championship. He's just he's got a really good range of vision. He can ping a ball, a bit of a Hollywood baller, shall we say, but he also spots the spaces. He spots the spaces. He's got incredible vision, decent feet, although not quick in his body movements. I do think he's quite adept at getting out of sticky situations. I would be a little bit concerned, however, if he was pressed quite aggressively, but he's got a really, really good cross on him as well, kind of Giles-esque. And as I said, it does lessen that burden on Giles, because to have 2 real creative outlets in the team is far greater than just having the one. So I'm really excited. You know, thinking about Cameron Archer's performance yesterday, you've got to think, him getting onto those balls would be fantastic. He loves to play them in space, in behind. You think Cameron Archer's fantastic at getting in behind, from what we've seen at Preston, from the little that we've seen of him at Middlesbrough. Really, really good. And yeah, I think he's probably the missing piece in midfield. Carrick referred to Cameron Archer as the missing piece up front, but I think Dan Barlaser is definitely the missing piece in midfield. So I'm really, really happy that we brought him in. Comparing him to Giles, you know, Dan Barlaser comes the closest to Boro's top ranked player, Ryan Giles, in the following stats: key passes per 90, Ryan Giles on 2.1, Dan Barlaser on 1.78, and expected assists per 90. Ryan Giles is on 0.29 and Dan Barlaser is on 0.21. So incredibly, incredibly close there. A really key creative asset for us. A fantastic passing ability. Loves to get the ball in behind. And yeah, I'm really excited to see what Dan Barlaser could do at Middlesbrough.
I think with his numbers as well, like, and we, you know, we bring a lot of data in this podcast now, and we try to dissect as much as we can. With football and data, you know, there's so many variables. You know, like how is the team play, how are they playing against, how is that press, and you know, I think to see him outperform a lot of his stats and really high performing in a poor team, but also the way that they're trying to play football at Rotherham as well. That impresses me the most. And, you know, I think where you are looking at more of his defensive stats as well, and you want to look at how he compares to Howson and Hackney. I think he doesn't, I believe Hackney and Howson overperform in certain elements of, I think it's more of his defensive style of his game. I think in interceptions and and progressive passes. But saying that, he's going to be playing in this system now where Middlesbrough are a bit more dominant on the ball. We're going to have a bit more luxury. We're going to have a bit more time and space. And, you know, yes, he might get pressed, but, you know, a really good footballer is always in good spaces. If you can find a good space on the football pitch and you always find yourself in space, that's really good signs of good game intelligence, and his ability to do that and also get the vision in for Archer to play it behind, I think could be really exciting for us. But also saying that, you know, if we're playing with Crooks up front there as well, it could just be a quick thing for Middlesbrough to get the ball to Barlaser, play it at Crooks' feet, give him go to Akpom and get the ball out wide and try and get past the wingers, wing backs from that way. So there's a lot of different options we can bring in. I think that he's a very, very good signing for us. And for me, and it sounds ridiculous, but I'm just excited by it. And it's ridiculous.
I don't think it sounds ridiculous. I think it's, you know, he's a good signing, something that we need in midfield. So I'm with you there with the excitement. Yeah,
and like the things are like that's like where you say, oh well, we haven't spent $5+ million on him. You know, he doesn't come in with that expectation of, you know, he's came from a huge club, he's expected to hit the ground running, and everyone's wanting him to perform superbly well. I feel like he's coming in with a low fee. Yes, we really love him, and I think that might play in a bit of a narrative. You know, obviously people listen to this podcast and that can get relayed back, but I just think it's such a good bit of business for us. And I think in terms of replacing him, D, where do you think he's going to fit in? Because, you know, Howson has played quite well this season, but, you know, let's not deny it. He's in his mid-30s now. Hayden Hackney's came from absolutely nowhere and just hit the ground running and been and probably growing every game, and he's performing at such a good level at the moment. But where do you think Dan Barlaser fits into the side now?
I think he's probably a long-term replacement for Howson, and it's good that we brought in somebody that I think you can safely assume that he's probably that, because as you said, Howson's coming to the end of his career now. He's been a fantastic servant for us, but there are times where I thought maybe we could rotate him with somebody else, but we don't really have the option. I kind of will say that I feel like Dan Barlaser is what we expected Alex Mowatt to be, so his position in the squad is going to be interesting, but I did have a look at a few clips of Dan Barlaser's tackling because I just wanted to know his defensive capabilities compared to Howson. And I will say, I know it kind of contradicts what we sort of spoke there about from that Rotherham fan, but his tackling didn't seem all that strong. If I'm honest, it did seem a little bit like there'd be some situations where you go in for the tackle, it'd be a little bit, you know, weak's probably not the right word, although it's the only word I could think of in this context, so I'm just gonna have to say it. But it kind of felt like a lot of the time from what I was seeing, and I looked at clips from the whole of this season and part of last season as well, albeit a little part of last season, just kind of felt like he was going in for the tackle and then it just wasn't strong enough to actually regain possession. But I have heard from Rotherham fans that his tackling's fine, so I'm going to trust them. But it was just something I noticed on the eye test. I mean, his tackling is on par with Howson and Hackney's in terms of tackles won. You know, tackles attempted 43, tackles won 26. Howson tackles attempted 44, tackles won 27. Hackney 31 tackles attempted, 15 tackles won. Obviously, Hackney's played considerably less games than the two of them because I think Dan Barlaser played every game but you know, the game week just gone. I don't even know if Rotherham were playing anyway because it was FA Cup weekend. But just a really seems like a very well-rounded player, as the Rotherham fan insight was offering us. I think he's probably the Howson replacement. And also, just a sort of side note with Dan Barlaser, his pass completion rate is quite low, but I think that's because he's the type to try to play those risky passes and try to find the gaps and to essentially not play the safe pass. He's not afraid to maybe play passes that no one else would see on a football pitch. I think Michael Carrick will really, really like him, and I'm not surprised that Carrick has picked him up and has said good things about him in the first interview that we've sort of seen. That he wanted Dan Barlaser for a while, he's liked him for a while. Sorry, so yeah, I think he's probably the long-term replacement to Howson.
Yeah, and with that as well, like to round it off, and you know, obviously you were saying there around attempting to make the pass. I think the fact that he attempts it is the really key thing, because you know, you see a lot of in the Championship now where teams are not willing enough to take that risk when there's a good option on, and sometimes you do lose possession in key moments in games and you can be punished for it. But I think sometimes you've got to try and make sure that you still do it and you still have the confidence to do it. And I stress to fans, if players are doing this like high risk type of football, that just to relax a bit, because it will happen. And sometimes it fails miserably and sometimes it's successful. Or when it is successful, it's very, very good. But there's also I think when you were saying there, dear, on like who's replacing, you know, I think the natural instinct is to put Howson and Hackney as you two, but also I would not mind to see Dan Barlaser in place of Riley McGree or Akpom if we were to switch ever so slightly in our system in terms of game management. I wouldn't drop Akpom at the moment. I wouldn't drop McGree at the moment. But in terms of like tactical flexibility, I think what Barlaser could really do is he could unlock teams on that left or right hand side where he doesn't have to, you know, run up and down the line. He's playing much more of a central floating position, and he has that ability and that vision to try and get those wingers and like the likes of Giles, like the likes of Force, to get him behind and really play those nice little through balls. And for me, that could be something that we could maybe see and tweak. But also, if he was to play in more of like an Akpom position, and we were wanting to see a game out and control it, I think he's really good in terms of his ball progression and also not just in keeping possession as well and knowing where that safe pass or that next pass is. That's where he can come in really handy. So I feel like he could maybe fit into those positions as well if we wanted to.
I feel like he's more of a deep. I mean, he's a deep line playmaker. That's essentially his role. I don't think he would. I don't think he'd be played further forward. I could see obviously you're thinking in that, but he's more to play the progressive pass than. I feel like if he's in a more advanced position, he's the one to receive the progressive pass. Yeah, I think he's a deep line playmaker, somebody that's going to take it in those deep midfield positions and want to spray out wide. And a lot of the time when you hear like, you know, he's very direct, it's often kind of lumped in with the long ball hoof it. But with Dan Barlaser, it's very measured. You can see he's looking up, he's seeing the movement. If there's any movement in behind from Archer, from Force, from McGree, Akpom, whoever it is, he's going to pick that up. And I think that's a really good option for Boro to have. So I think to have him operating in those deep line sort of midfield areas is really, really good. I mean, he's completed more total progressive passes than anyone else in the Boro squad. To define a progressive pass, it's a forward pass that attempts to advance the team significantly closer to the opposition's goal. So yeah, I think... yeah, he's definitely in that Howson or Hackney position. I think for now, you might see Hayden Hackney dropped. I mentioned it in our Sunday pod. It's probably easier to drop Hackney as opposed to Howson, just because of, you know, he's a young player, manages minutes, etc. But yeah, it's going to be interesting because I think right now he doesn't get in the team, which is crazy. But it's just the way that the two of them are playing at the moment, Howson and Hackney. So really good options for Carrick to have. And I think this is a really good deal. Hopefully it actually transpires that it's the case, because I think we've seen a lot of the time that we've signed a good player, they just it hasn't quite materialised for them. But with Dan Barlaser, it seems like he's got all the tools to be able to really flourish in this team.
Competition increases performance, you know, it really does. And if we can get the most out of Howson and Hackney with Barlaser even just being in the building, then that's 900k worth spent if it gets you promoted at the end of the season. But Dana, thank you very much for joining me as always, and to the listeners and the viewers on YouTube and your podcast provider, don't forget to give us a 5-star rating on your podcast provider, subscribe and give us a thumbs up on YouTube as well, because that helps us get found, grow, and all that kind of fun stuff as well. But for right now, this has been the Lowdown on Dan Barlaser. Dan Barlaser. This has been the Boro Breakdown podcast, and that was like Dan Barlaser chatter in a pod up the Boro Breakdown.